When it comes to Magic the Gathering's Dungeons & Dragons set, Wizards of the Coast has done an excellent job creating a range of cards that successfully capture the essence of a number of different characters and items from the game, giving you a real sense of rightness. But today, we're going to talk about a couple of new spoiled cards that actually do the opposite. When you look at them, they don't really feel right when you connect them to Dungeons & Dragons, and they leave you with a sense that they feel just wrong.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope you are having an excellent weekend. We are here today to talk about a few cards that are essentially a bit of a failure from the perspective of not connecting the right way to the Dungeons & Dragons items that they represent. Now, in terms of them being Magic cards, they're not the worst cards. It's just the disconnect between the overall concept and how it's executed as a Magic card that really stands out to me. And we do have a sub-theme where we're going to be sticking to the rods, wands, and staves category of the old DM manual with the treasure and everything that's in there, right? So if you know what I'm talking about, then you get that reference. If not, don't worry about it. Just understand that it's a staff magical kind of conversation. So we're going to start out by talking about the card that really stood out as an oddity to me, and that is the immovable rod. So from a mechanical perspective, it's a 1 white casting cost artifact. You may choose not to untap immovable rod during your untap step. Whenever immovable rod becomes untapped, venture into the dungeon, pay 1 white and 3, tap it. For as long as immovable rod remains tapped, another target permanent loses all abilities and can't attack or block. So from a purely mechanical perspective from Magic the Gathering, this is obviously a card that fits very well into white. It feels like abilities that we've seen from white for forever, essentially. White has had the ability to pacify creatures, which is the ability to make it so they can't attack or block, since the days of Mirage. We're talking like the 90s, right? So white's ability to set rules about combat and things like that, white is a very rules-oriented color, so that makes perfect sense. And having it extend out so that it can actually hit any permanent, right? This actually affects lands, artifacts, it doesn't matter. You can do enchantments with it, and it takes away all of their abilities. This genuinely shuts down a range of things. This is a more powerful card on the surface than it first appears, right? You can keep things locked down, you can take abilities away, and as long as you don't untap the immovable rod, they're never getting the ability back. And in the worst case scenario, if they don't have a creature that you really care that much about keeping tapped down, you can just use it as like a combat maneuver, right? Where you go, oh, you wanted to attack with that guy? Sorry, he's tapped before combat. On my turn, I'll untap the immovable rod because I get to venture into the dungeon. So as far as answers go to keep something out of your hair, this is a pretty solid card. Like, I would put this into my cube and play with it. But from a perspective of how it translates as a Dungeons & Dragons item in Magic the Gathering, it really doesn't make sense. I mean, in the artwork, it looks great. That's literally what the immovable rods look like. If you go and look it up, that is a exact replica of the item. But the immovable rod itself is a fairly underwhelming item in Dungeons & Dragons. Now, there's going to be people who disagree with me. There always is. And that's going to be based on the fact that people are going to be like, yo, don't you know all the things you can do with the movable rod? I did this amazing thing in my one campaign. You can do all kinds of awesome things with items that aren't that great. Something imbued with a simple magic power that is used in a clever way can actually be really awesome. But we're just talking about generalized here. When it comes to magic items in D&D, an immovable rod is an underwhelming item. What does it do? It's an immovable rod. That's all it is. It's a stick. You push a button. When you push the button, the stick can't be moved. That's it. That's all the magic that is in one of these. So when you get in a D&D campaign, you go, oh, okay, but there are clever uses you can use it for, right? So this falls apart to me as a concept for Magic the Gathering translating into D&D because it makes the immovable rod so much more powerful than it is. And I genuinely can't connect this concept to the abilities that it has. Like, why does the immovable rod not being used anymore? So you press a button to make it immovable, and you press the same button to make it so that you can move again. And here's the thing, it's not keyed to its owner. So if you have an immovable rod, like let's say I have an immovable rod and I use it and I press the button and it just stays there, you can just walk up and press the button, it can be moved again. So it's not keyed to its user. You can't lock other people out from stopping it being immovable. They can just click the same button. If the button's hidden, oh, well, they just have to figure out where it was. If they saw you click it, boom, there you go. They're going to be freed from it, right? That's the entire function of the item. So how does that translate into venturing into the dungeon? It doesn't. It makes zero sense. You can't even use it from the perspective of, well, you were immobile and now you're mobile again. You can go into the dungeon. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't me. I immobilized somebody else's stuff. So wait, how does this translate into me venturing into the dungeon? And then that is a more minor quibble to the fact that the main power of this artifact card right here doesn't line up with the idea. It's just like, wait, this is just a rod that can't be moved. And you're saying this can stop any permanent from being used. Like, you can drive this into a land, and now you can't tap the mana from this land. You can't use its activated abilities. You're literally cut off from the mana that is, like, tuned into this world. I can use this. You see that dragon flying up there? I got this rod. I'm going to stop it. How exactly? Well, take a look. We have a perfect example here in the artwork. You see this halfling has been completely immobilized. There's nothing he can do. His cloak has been pinned to the ground, and we all know that halflings actually have cloaks growing out of their backs. It's not like he could just reach up and go like this. Oh, look, my cloak's off. Turn around, click on the button, pick his cloak up, put it back on. I've been so immobilized, I can't use any of my abilities. Like, this is shown as a prank, essentially. This is shown in one action moment where the halfling's moving along. Someone goes, boonk, sticks a rod in his cloak, and he goes, and he gets pulled back, which it is a comical moment. But ultimately, it shows you how this doesn't work. It genuinely just doesn't work as a concept. There is no way to use an immovable rod to stop beings from moving around, with the exception of literally like impaling them with it. There's nothing. I can't think of any scenario where you could use a rod. Like, you're telling me that you can just go up to Sarkin and go, bonk, I'm stuck a rod in your cloak, Sarkin. You can't do anything anymore. You know how you like to turn into dragons and throw fire magic and stuff? You can't do none of that. Why? Because I clicked my rod that says stuff can't move. Oh, that makes sense. So yeah, for me, massive, like, it all falls apart. It's a massive fail in terms of bringing the concept into the game. As an actual card, I like it. Seems like it's fun, be cool to play with. But flavor concept and making it feel like the immovable rod from D&D, nope, it doesn't make it. So this is the biggest example of one really not connecting with the concept. I'm going to show you one that somewhat connects with the concept next, and then we'll show you a nice execution at the end. But we're going to deal with the troublesome rods first. So the next item we're going to talk about is the Rod of Absorption. Now, this one does come closer to feeling like the Dungeons and Dragons item. At least it's not as outlandish as the immovable situation we just dealt with, right? So, Rod of Absorption is 1 blue and 2 for an artifact that says, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. So, all instants and sorceries are going to just get zormped up. Here we go. Let's absorb them up. Now, what do you do with them? Pay X, tap, sacrifice the Rod of Absorption. You may cast any number of spells from among cards exiled with Rod of Absorption with total mana value X or less without paying their mana costs. So, this, I mean, from a gameplay perspective, I don't know how powerful this is going to be, and that may be because this was designed for Commander decks, and I have a limited amount of experience playing Commander, so I don't see all the crazy amounts of spells that get thrown around, and I think about it from the perspective of a 2-player game, where this card actually becomes underwhelming. I mean, you're paying 3 mana, and when you put it out, it relies on a number of instants and sorceries being cast to really make it good, right? feels somewhat like a pipe dream style card where you're like, I'm living the dream. Everybody cast all kinds of crazy spells. I get to absorb them up and use them later. Like, admittedly, the ultimate ability of it, when you go to sacrifice it, that's going to be a feel-good moment in most cases, where you get to cast a whole bunch of spells for free, as long as you have the mana to feed into it. So this definitely feels like a longer play style. Like, the longer you're sitting there letting it build up, the better you're going to be overall from it. And it's crazy, the artwork on it, the way that the Rod of Absorption looks like, it looks like a little tower on a staff, right? It's got like, actually, to me, it kind of looks like a rook from chess, stuffed on top of a stick with little magical arcane symbols on it, and all this magic is being drawn into it, right? That's what's going on. Although, if you didn't know it was the Rod of Absorption, you would probably think that this was some kind of lightning caster, right? Where you're literally blasting out lightning. Oh, I never noticed that it was like a reptilian hand holding the rod. It kind of melds in, maybe because of the color of the art. It's all blue and everything like that. But that's pretty cool. I dig that. So, the idea of the Rod of Absorption in Dungeons and Dragons is something that absorbs up magic. But here is one major difference. The first major difference is that the Rod of Absorption absorbs the spells before they go off, essentially canceling the spells or countering them, to use magic parlance, right? So it essentially stops the spell from happening altogether. Now this version doesn't. This allows every spell to go off and absorbs its magical essence afterwards, which is a huge difference. It is a very, very big difference in terms of operation. Additionally, the Rod of Absorption in Dungeons and Dragons definitely does have the ability to expend the magical energy that is inside of it. Essentially, there is a limit. This rod is technically better in one way than the regular rod. The regular rod can only absorb up to a certain threshold of magic, and then it can't hold any more magic. It's full. And at any point, the person who has the Rod of Absorption can actually expend the magic that's in it. But it doesn't have to be done all in one burst. So they have the ability to capitalize on all of the magic that gets stored in the rod. So that is another major difference in the way that this functions. It's a one-shot using the magic that's in it. It doesn't stop the magic that's being cast from actually harming you. So it is straight up a far worse Rod of Absorption. It's literally like you can't use it to protect yourself. You can just use it to survive things that have already happened to you, which really doesn't feel like a high-level magical item. But overall, in terms of being a magic card, it's all right. It's not nearly as glaring as the immovable rod. The immovable rod was really the whole, like, the triggering factor for me making this video. I wanted to talk about it, but I thought it'd be cool to talk about some other cards as well. So these are two examples of cards that don't really successfully capture the spirit of the card, like the Dungeons and Dragons concept. We do have another card that I feel like it does as well, but this card, the Wand of Orcus, what I'm trying to say here is this is a card that has a fair bit of its spirit encapsulated in a way that feels right and just can't be represented properly in Magic because it's like this is basically like a god level item. This is a legendary artifact where it has so much power that there's no way to represent its power on a Magic card. The Rod of Absorption, you could turn that into it stopping instants and sorceries just by making it obscenely expensive. If you gave it a crazy huge casting cost, then you could literally have it counter and absorb the spells, right? Or you could have it as a tap ability. There's ways to make the previous Rod work as the actual card, whereas the Wand of Orcus is just too powerful to actually make functionally work as a card. But I feel like it's got pretty good flavor overall that captures the idea behind it. And yes, it is made out of genuine body parts. You look at the artwork, you can see you got the spinal column there, and that the head of a warrior, that's an actual warrior skull that's affixed up to the top. This essentially is a possession of Orcus that you can't go and get it from him. He will just sometimes make it appear in the hands of mortals when he knows it's going to cause massive amounts of harm or further his plans. So, it's 1 black and 2 for a legendary artifact. It's equipment that says whenever equipped creature attacks or blocks, it and zombies you control gain death touch until end of turn. Orcus wants everyone to die. He wants everybody to be in a state of undeath. That's what he is all about. So, making the equipped creature and all zombies have death touch, that 100% lines up. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. That's wild. Do 5 damage, make 5 zombies. This is a crazy piece of equipment that is all about spreading death and zombies everywhere. And the artwork looks like a crazy metal cover as well. That staff looks intense. It's got like flames belching out of its mouth. There's this black miasma that flows around it, and it's just kind of drifting down underneath. And actually, if you look directly down under the hand, it almost looks like there's the silhouette of a skull in the miasma too. Either way, this is a cool card that doesn't fully represent the Dungeons and Dragons concept, but that's simply because it would literally be impossible to represent it effectively. The same way that certain characters, when you make a Planeswalker card for them, it's like Nicol Bolas is an insanely strong Planeswalker, but when you get the card, there's only so much power they can put on it, right? Anyways, this is what I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed it, my friends. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to call me a nitpicker, because that's, in a way, what I was doing here, but it was just meant to be lighthearted fun, so I hope you enjoyed it. Big shout out to all my patrons. Thanks very much for supporting my channel, and I will see all of you, my friends, for the next video.